My name is Allison Carter, and I was 29 years old when everything I believed about love, loyalty, and family collapsed in a single night. 6 months ago, if you had asked anyone who knew me, they would have said I was living a life most people only saw on social media. Polished, successful, enviable. I lived in San Diego, in a sunlit ocean view apartment in La Jolla, where the mornings smelled like salt and eucalyptus, and the evenings glowed gold over the Pacific. I worked as a senior marketing director at a fast-growing tech startup downtown, earning a six-figure salary that came with respect, stability, and the quiet pride of having built something on my own. But what mattered most to me wasn't my career. It was my family. More specifically, my mother. Catherine Carter was 52, elegant without trying, warm in a way that made people lean closer when she spoke. She had raised me alone after my father died. Suddenly, when I was 12, and for as long as I could remember, she had been my anchor. We weren't just mother and daughter, we were best friends. She called me every morning, not to check on me, not out of obligation, but because she genuinely wanted to hear my voice. She remembered everything, every birthday, every promotion, every heartbreak. And when I got engaged, she took it personally, as if my happiness were her greatest achievement. My fiancé was Brandon Mitchell. He was 31, a pediatrician at Children's Hospital of San Diego, and the kind of man people trusted instinctively. Tall, dark-haired, soft-spoken, with a smile that made parents relax and children laugh. We met at a charity gala in 2021. One of those formal events where everyone pretends not to be bored. He spilled champagne on my dress by accident. I laughed. He apologized 3 times. 2 months later, I knew I wanted to marry him. We had been together for 3 years. 3 steady, affectionate, reassuring years. He adored my mother, or so I thought. Sunday brunches at Balboa Park became routine. Catherine would tease him about working too much. He'd compliment her taste in decor. They laughed easily together. I told myself that was a blessing, that I was lucky to have the 2 people I loved most get along so effortlessly. Our wedding was scheduled for November at the historic Hotel del Coronado, overlooking the ocean. 200 guests, a string quartet, farm-to-table catering, every detail planned, with obsessive care. My college roommate Natalie was my maid of honor. Brandon's brother flew in from Portland to be his best man. My mother was everywhere. Flowers, seating charts, invitation calligraphy. She sent me inspiration photos constantly, sometimes more excited than I was. At the time, I thought it was love. Now I know it was something else. The night before the wedding, I stayed at a boutique hotel downtown with Catherine and my bridal party. Champagne, strawberries, laughter. The kind of memory I believed I would treasure forever. Around 11:30 p.m., after the bridesmaids went to bed, my mother excused herself to shower. She left her phone charging beside her wine glass. I wasn't snooping. I swear to God I wasn't. But when the screen lit up with a message notification, my eyes drifted instinctively. The sender's name froze my blood. Brandon. The message read, "Tonight was incredible. I can still feel you. Tomorrow will be hard, but we'll get through it together. I love you, not her." Attached was a photo. And in that instant, everything died. I stared at my mother's phone as if it were a live grenade sitting inches from my hand. For a few seconds, maybe longer, I couldn't breathe. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped the air out of me and forgotten to put it back. The words on the screen didn't rearrange themselves into something softer. They didn't blur or fade. They stayed exactly where they were, sharp and undeniable. I love you, not her. The photo attached wasn't explicit in the way people usually imagine, but it didn't need to be. It was intimate in a way that was worse. Brandon was shirtless, lying back against pillows I recognized instantly, his pillows, from his apartment. My mother was beside him, her bare shoulder visible, her hand resting on his chest like it belonged there. Like she belonged there. My ears rang. A high-pitched sound, almost like static, drowned out every other thought. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a drunken mistake. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. I knew that before I even touched the screen. My hands were shaking as I picked up her phone. I half expected it to lock itself, to erase the evidence, to wake me up from whatever nightmare I had slipped into. But it stayed open, patient, almost inviting. I scrolled. Message after message loaded, each one driving the knife deeper. I can't stop thinking about last night. She suspects nothing. We just have to get through the wedding. After that, we'll figure things out. 2 months. At least 2 months. They talked logistics, timing, excuses. They joked about how trusting I was, how easy it was to hide things from me because I was so busy and so focused on work. My mother, had typed, "She adores you. She'll never believe it." Brandon replied with a heart. I felt myself detach from my body, watching from somewhere above as the woman I had been minutes earlier disintegrated. The room felt unreal, like a set piece. The champagne glasses on the table gleamed under soft lighting. My wedding dress hung nearby in its protective garment, pristine and untouched. I thought I might scream. Instead, I went completely still. Something inside me went cold, not numb, not blank, cold and precise. The kind of calm I felt right before walking into a boardroom to defend a campaign with millions of dollars on the line. The kind of focus that came when emotions became liabilities. I didn't cry. Not yet. I took my phone out and began taking photos of the screen. Every message, every timestamp, every image. My movements were mechanical, deliberate, documentation, evidence, proof. Marketing had trained me to spot patterns, to build cases, to anticipate counter-arguments before they were spoken. And somewhere in the wreckage of my heart, that instinct kicked in. If they denied it, I would have proof. If they minimized it, I would have proof. If they tried to rewrite the story, I would have proof. I had just finished photographing the thread when the bathroom door opened. Steam spilled into the room. My mother stepped out wrapped in a towel, her hair twisted up, her face relaxed. She looked peaceful, happy. "Sweetheart," she said warmly, "you okay? You went quiet." I looked at her. Really looked. The woman who had kissed my scraped knees, who had sat up all night with me when I had my first heartbreak, who had held my hand when my father's casket was lowered into the ground. And I felt nothing. "I'm just exhausted," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Big day tomorrow." She smiled and leaned down to kiss my forehead. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be the most beautiful day of your life." The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. I waited until she went into the adjoining room before I sat down on the edge of the bed. That was when my hands started trembling again. That was when the weight of it crushed my chest. This wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated, planned, sustained. They were going to let me walk down the aisle, let me say vows, let me bind myself legally and emotionally to a man who was in love with my mother. They were going to smile at me while they did it. The humiliation of it burned, but underneath that was something darker. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of a scene in private. I wasn't going to beg for explanations. I wasn't going to let them control the narrative. Sometime around 2 a.m., I stopped shaking. By 2:30, I had made my decision. If they thought they were clever, if they thought they had outsmarted me, they were wrong. I opened my laptop. First, I uploaded every screenshot to a secure cloud drive only I controlled. Redundancy mattered. Then I created folders, dates, labels. I noted timestamps and cross-referenced them with Brandon's supposed hospital shifts and my mother's late client meetings. Patterns emerged instantly. I didn't miss a single one. By 3:15, I had booked time at the hotel's business center for later that morning. By 3:30, I had drafted a skeleton presentation. Clean, elegant, understated. The kind of slideshow people expect at weddings. Only this one told the truth. At 3:47 a.m., I called my attorney, Jennifer Walsh. She answered on the second ring. "Allison," she said, instantly alert. "What's wrong?" I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a brief silence on the line. "I'm so sorry," she said finally, "but I want you to hear this clearly. You're thinking rationally, and what you're planning is legal. This is your evidence, your event, your life." I closed my eyes. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want the truth." "Sometimes," Jennifer replied, "they're the same thing." When the call ended, the sun was just beginning to rise over San Diego. I hadn't slept, but I had never felt more awake. By the time the sun fully rose over San Diego, painting the sky in soft shades of coral and gold, I had already crossed a line there was no returning from. I showered slowly, letting the hot water hit my shoulders, not to relax, but to think. Every drop felt like it was burning away the last remnants of the woman I had been before 11:27 p.m., the night before. I replayed everything in my head, not with hysteria, but with clarity, memory by memory, detail by detail. I didn't allow myself to cry. Crying would blur my vision, and I needed to see everything clearly. At 7 a.m., I walked into the hotel's business center wearing leggings, an oversized sweater, and the calm expression of a bride running last-minute errands. The concierge smiled and congratulated me. I smiled back. Inside, I worked like I was preparing the most important pitch of my career. I refined the presentation slide by slide. No dramatic fonts, no emotional language, just facts, messages, dates, photos, clean transitions, minimal commentary. I wanted the evidence to speak for itself. People trust what they see more than what they're told. Then I built the website. Private, password protected, mobile optimized. A single landing page, a brief line at the top. Truth matters. Below it, everything. By 9:30 a.m., it was live. I tested it twice, then again. I printed backup copies too. High-quality paper, elegant folders. If technology failed, the truth would still land. Control redundancy, precision. At 10:15, my phone buzzed. A message from Brandon. Morning, beautiful. I barely slept. Can't believe today's finally here. I stared at the screen. How easily he lied. How effortlessly the words came. I typed back. Same. See you soon. Nothing more. The silence unsettled him. I could tell. He followed up with a heart emoji. Then a selfie in his tuxedo, grinning. I didn't respond. At 11:02, Catherine knocked on my door, glowing with excitement, holding a garment bag. My dress is ready, she said, stepping inside. I can't believe my baby's getting married. I watched her closely, her movements, her eyes. There was no guilt there, no hesitation, just anticipation. That hurt more than I expected. Mom, I said softly, did you sleep okay? She smiled. Like a rock. I nodded. So did I, once I stopped being naive. When she left, I sat alone for a few minutes, letting the silence press in. This was the last quiet moment I would have for a long time. At noon, Jennifer arrived at the hotel, impeccably dressed, blending seamlessly into the guest list. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Just seeing her steadied me. You ready? She asked quietly. I've never been more ready, I replied. By the time the makeup artist arrived, I slipped fully into character. The radiant bride. The calm daughter. The woman everyone expected to see. As my makeup was applied, I stared at my reflection. The face looking back at me was composed, elegant, almost serene. No one would have guessed that beneath the silk robe and perfect eyeliner was a woman preparing to detonate the foundation of her own life. And that was the point. When I finally stepped into my wedding dress, a custom Vera Wang, fitted perfectly, I felt something unexpected. Not grief, power. I fastened the diamond earrings my mother had given me for my birthday, the same ones she had helped me choose. The symbolism didn't escape me. It grounded me. Every step mattered today, every word, every pause. Outside, the hotel buzzed with activity. Guests arrived. Music rehearsed. Flowers were adjusted. The ocean shimmered like nothing was wrong with the world. And maybe, for everyone else, it wasn't. But for me, this wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a reckoning. I checked my watch. 2:45 p.m. Almost time. At 3 o'clock sharp, the string quartet began to play. Paco Bell's canon in D floated through the manicured lawn of the Hotel del Coronado, carried by the ocean breeze. The Pacific stretched endlessly behind the altar, calm and indifferent, as if it had no opinion about the lives unraveling in front of it. 200 guests sat in perfect rows of white chairs, linen suits, silk dresses, sunglasses perched delicately on noses. From the outside, it looked like every other luxury wedding in Southern California. From the inside, it felt like standing on the edge of a fault line. I stood just beyond the archway, my bouquet cradled in my hands, my arm linked through my Uncle David's. He had agreed to walk me down the aisle after my father died. One of the many quiet acts of love my family had given me over the years. You look beautiful, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you, I replied. And I meant it. Not because of the dress or the makeup, but because I had never felt more aligned with myself. As the music swelled, I took my first step forward. Every eye turned toward me. I saw familiar faces as I walked, colleagues from the startup, Brandon's co-workers from the hospital, distant relatives who had flown in just for the weekend. Smiles, tears, phones discreetly lowered. At the altar stood Brandon. He looked flawless. Midnight blue tuxedo, polished shoes, that same confident posture I had fallen in love with years ago. When he saw me, his face softened, and he mouthed the words, "You're incredible." I held his gaze and smiled. In the front row, my mother sat radiant in her champagne-colored dress, the one we had picked together at Nordstrom months earlier. She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, playing her role perfectly. The performance deserved an award. The officiant, Reverend Thompson, cleared his throat and began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Allison and Brandon." His voice was warm, practiced. He spoke about love as a choice, about trust, about the sacred nature of marriage. Each word landed with surgical precision. I could feel it building, not inside me, but around me. At exactly 3 minutes into the ceremony, Maria, the hotel's event coordinator, began moving quietly through the rows. She was discreet, professional, efficient. In her hands were what looked like elegant wedding programs. Each one contained a small surprise, a QR code, and a password. I watched from the corner of my eye as she handed the first stack to my Uncle Frank, seated in the third row. He scanned it absent-mindedly, likely expecting a slideshow or a personal message from the couple. His expression changed instantly. Curiosity, confusion, disbelief. His wife leaned over, looked at his phone. Her hand flew to her mouth. The ripple spread exactly as I had envisioned. Phones tilted, brows furrowed, eyes widened. My boss, Christina, scanned hers next. She stiffened, then quietly showed the screen to her husband. He sucked in a sharp breath. The air shifted. Whispers began, soft at first, then multiplying. A collective unease moved through the crowd like a slow wave. Behind me, I felt Brandon tense. He glanced sideways, then toward the guests, trying to understand why so many people were suddenly looking at their phones instead of the altar. My mother remained oblivious. She smiled at a woman across the aisle, adjusted her bracelet, focused on the officiant's words about honesty and devotion. I stood perfectly still. Reverend Thompson continued, "Marriage is built on transparency, on truth, on the willingness to stand together even when—" A soft gasp cut through the ceremony. Then another. Someone dropped their phone. I saw Brandon's aunt show her screen to his mother. She let out a small, strangled sound and pressed her handkerchief to her lips, her face draining of color. Brandon followed her gaze. His eyes flicked to her phone, then to the surrounding guests. Then, finally, to me. The blood drained from his face. His smile collapsed. I could see the moment his world tipped off its axis, the panic rising, the realization that whatever he thought he had under control wasn't. My Uncle David received a program next. He scanned it and went utterly still. He looked at Brandon, then at my mother, then back at his phone. His jaw clenched. My mother sensed something then. She turned slightly, confused by the shifting energy behind her. Her smile faltered as she noticed the expressions: shock, anger, pity. She turned fully around. Our eyes met. For a fraction of a second, she didn't understand. Then she saw the phones, the screens. The truth reflected back at her from every direction. Her face went white. Reverend Thompson reached the familiar part of the ceremony, his voice steady, unaware, or perhaps willfully unaware, of the storm cresting behind him. "If anyone here present can show just cause why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony," he said, "let them speak now or forever hold their peace." I stepped forward and gently took the microphone from his hand. The lawn went silent. No whispers, no movement, just the sound of the ocean and my own heartbeat, slow and steady. "Yes," I said clearly. Every head snapped toward me. I turned first to Brandon, then to my mother, and finally to the congregation. "I have something to say." For a heartbeat, no one moved. The word yes still echoed in the air, heavier than any vow that had been spoken that afternoon. Reverend Thompson froze beside me, his mouth slightly open, his hand still resting on the leather-bound book he had been reading from moments earlier. I held the microphone with both hands, grounding myself. Then I looked at Brandon. Up close, I could see the panic he was trying, and failing, to contain. His jaw was tight, his eyes darting, calculating. He took a half step toward me, instinctively, as if proximity alone could fix what was unraveling. "Allison," he began, his voice strained, rehearsed. "Whatever this is, we can talk about it later, not here." I raised my hand. He stopped. The silence deepened. I loved you, I said, my voice steady, carrying effortlessly across the lawn. I loved you completely. I trusted you with my heart, my future, my family. I was ready to stand here today and build a life with you. A murmur rippled through the guests, but I didn't look away from him. And I want everyone here to understand something very clearly, I continued. This isn't a misunderstanding. This isn't gossip, and this isn't something that can be explained away. I turned then, slowly, to face my mother. Catherine was crying now, tears streaking down her carefully applied makeup. Her hands trembled as she clutched her purse, her eyes locked on mine with an expression I had never seen before. Fear. Mom, I said quietly. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. You were my best friend, I said. You were the person I trusted more than anyone in the world, the woman who taught me what love and integrity looked like. My voice didn't crack, I didn't let it. For the past 2 months, I went on, while I was planning this wedding, choosing flowers, tasting cakes, writing vows, the two of you were having an affair. The words landed like thunder. Gasps erupted openly now. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another voice said, "That can't be real." A chair scraped against the ground as someone stood up to get a better view. My mother shook her head violently, finally finding her voice. "Allison, please, please let me explain." There's nothing to explain, I said, cutting through her words with calm precision. The messages, the photos, the dates, they're all time-stamped. Everyone here has already seen them. I gestured gently toward the guests. Phones were still raised, screens still glowing. The truth was no longer mine alone. Brandon lunged forward then, desperation breaking through his composure. "It's not what it looks like," he said loudly. "We didn't mean for it to happen this way. We were confused." "Confused?" my Uncle David barked from the second row, rising to his feet. His face was red with fury. "You slept with her mother and planned to marry her the next day. That's not confusion, that's calculated." Applause broke out, sharp, scattered, angry. Brandon's parents sat frozen. His mother had buried her face in her hands. His father stared straight ahead, his expression hollow. "This wedding is over," I said clearly. The words cut through the chaos like a blade. "I will not marry a man who has been sleeping with my mother, and I will not continue a relationship with a woman who could betray her own daughter so completely." My mother let out a broken sob. "Allison, please, I made a mistake. I'll do anything. Please don't do this." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time since the night before, I felt the grief rise. But grief didn't get to decide what happened next. "This," I said softly, "is me doing something." I handed the microphone back to Reverend Thompson, whose hands were shaking slightly as he took it. He looked like a man who had just witnessed a lifetime's worth of vows dissolve in front of him. Then I turned, and I walked away. My dress whispered against the aisle as I moved, each step measured, unhurried. Behind me, the ceremony collapsed into noise, shouting, crying, arguments breaking out in all directions. I heard my mother call my name. I didn't turn around. I heard Brandon shouting, trying to push past people, promising explanations, begging for a conversation. I didn't slow down. The closer I got to the hotel entrance, the lighter I felt. Not happy, not relieved. Free. Natalie caught up with me just inside the doorway, her eyes wide, her face pale. "Allison," she said, breathless, I don't even know what to say." I took a deep breath. "I do," I replied. "The truth doesn't always save what you love. Sometimes it saves you." Behind us, the most carefully planned day of my life lay in ruins. And I didn't regret a single word. The fallout was immediate and absolute. By the time Natalie and I reached the quiet hallway near the hotel's private elevators, my phone was already vibrating nonstop in my clutch. Missed calls, messages, notifications stacking faster than I could read them. Guests were posting. Screenshots were circulating. The truth had slipped beyond the boundaries of the ceremony and into the public bloodstream. I didn't look. Not yet. I asked Natalie to stay with me while Jennifer handled the practicalities, canceling contracts, securing my belongings, making sure I left the hotel without being cornered. The staff moved quickly, professionally, with a kindness that surprised me. One of the coordinators pressed a glass of water into my hand. Another offered a private exit. I thanked them and declined. I wasn't hiding. I was finished. Within hours, the story was everywhere. By Sunday evening, clips and photos from the ceremony were trending across Instagram and Twitter. By Monday morning, local San Diego stations were calling it the wedding that stunned Southern California. By Tuesday, national outlets were reaching out, eager for commentary, eager for tears, eager for spectacle. I gave them none. I agreed to a single interview with a reporter from the San Diego Union Tribune who had previously covered my company's product launch. I chose her because she knew how to write without sensationalizing. I believe in truth and accountability, I told her. What happened at my wedding wasn't a performance. It was the natural consequence of prolonged deception. That was all. The professional consequences for Brandon were swift. Children's Hospital placed him on administrative leave within days. Parents complained. Donors questioned the hospital's judgment. The board quietly requested his resignation less than 2 weeks later. Soon after, his medical license came under review, not for the affair itself, but for violations tied to dishonesty during internal inquiries. The man who once wore trust like a second skin lost it completely. My mother's world collapsed more slowly, but just as thoroughly. Her interior design business had been built on referrals, reputation, personal relationships. Those evaporated overnight. Clients canceled contracts. Her longtime business partner dissolved their partnership. Invitations stopped coming. Friends stopped calling. Family fractured in ways I hadn't anticipated. Some relatives cut her off entirely. Others tried to remain neutral, an impossible position that only bred resentment. My Aunt Rebecca publicly disowned her sister, calling what she had done unforgivable. Holidays became logistical minefields. And through it all, I stayed silent. I took 3 weeks off work. My boss, Christina, supported me without hesitation. You handled that with integrity, she told me. Not everyone could. I spent those weeks sleeping, walking along the coast, sitting with the weight of what I had lost. Not just a fiancé, not just a mother as I knew her, but a version of myself. 4 months later, an opportunity arrived that felt almost unreal. A major marketing agency in New York City offered me a creative director position. Higher salary, bigger clients, global reach. The offer came through a professional contact who had followed the wedding story, not with fascination, but respect. You didn't spin, he said during our call. You stood still and told the truth. That takes nerve. I accepted. Leaving San Diego felt like shedding a skin. Before I moved, my mother showed up at my apartment one Saturday morning. I hadn't told her where I lived. She must have asked around. She looked smaller somehow, older. Her confidence, once effortless, had eroded. She stood in my doorway with red eyes and trembling hands. "Allison," she said, "I know I don't deserve this, but please, just let me speak." I considered closing the door. Instead, I stepped aside. She cried. She apologized. She said everything people say when they've destroyed their own lives and finally understand the cost. She didn't make excuses this time. She didn't ask for forgiveness as if it were owed. When she finished, the silence stretched between us. "I forgive you," I said finally. Her face crumpled with relief. "But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation," I continued. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it so I don't carry this anger into the rest of my life." She nodded. She understood. Or maybe she didn't, but it no longer mattered. 8 months later, I was thriving in Manhattan. New apartment, new routines, new colleagues who knew nothing about my past unless I chose to tell them. I worked harder than ever, led campaigns that challenged me, felt proud of myself in a way that wasn't tied to anyone else's approval. I dated again, slowly, cautiously. I paid attention now. I listened more than I spoke. I trusted patterns over promises. Through mutual friends, I heard that Brandon had moved to Seattle, working at a small clinic, that my mother had relocated to Phoenix, into a modest apartment near her aging parents. Their affair hadn't survived the exposure. It never does. The story of my wedding became a cautionary tale, a legend passed around dinner tables and offices. People whispered about it when they recognized my name. I rarely thought about it anymore, because the truth is this. What felt like the end of my world turned out to be the beginning of an honest one. Betrayal strips everything away. It leaves you with nothing but yourself. And sometimes that's exactly what you need.